This is the Grizzlies Podcast with Grizzlies beat reporter Ron Tillery.
Ron Tillery here, the only beat writer the Grizzlies have ever known in Memphis, and I'm joined by the only Grizzly head coach to never lose a game, David Fizdale.
That's awesome.
So we're just a few days into training camp. You know, Coach, let's start here because you talk a lot about culture, and you make no bones about it. You bring in a lot of Miami with you.
Absolutely.
What does that mean?
Accountability first, accountability to each other, accountability to everyone in the organization, from the janitor all the way up. We all got to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and no one can slack in that area. You know, we talk about leadership on all levels, where we develop leadership throughout the roster, throughout the coaching staff. I want these guys to take ownership of things, and so when I say culture, it's just a structure that a template to, you know, hold people to a certain standard, and that's really what it's about. And it goes from the court to the locker room to off the court.
Well, you certainly receive a lot of high praise. It's not just because you've been a part of championships in Miami. It's because how you've prepared to be a head coach. You know, I asked you this during your press conference, your initial one, but can you talk again about like why you are confident in being ready at this point in time?
You know, I had great bosses. I was really lucky. Even when I coached college, you know, I coached my first time in college with my college coach Brad Holland, ex-NBA champion, just a really awesome coach, great person who I'm still very close to. I soaked up a lot of knowledge from him. You know, Ray Lopes, I was only with him for a year at Fresno, but man, we were under some dire circumstances, and he still got that team to win the conference. And so just when you talk about building toughness and grit, he was the epitome of that. He had worked with Kelvin Sampson in Oklahoma the year before for the Final Four teams that they had. And so if you can remember those teams were pretty gritty. And so I learned a lot from Ray. And then obviously Eric Musselman, he was an offensive genius, is an offensive genius. I don't know if a lot of people know that about him, but the guy is just on another planet when it comes to offense and you know, teaching guys how to be aggressive and how to play together. When I got with Mike Woodson, I think that's when I really felt like a basketball dummy, because Woody had just came from working with Larry Brown, and they won the championship in Detroit. And when you talk about teaching defense, holding guys accountable, developing players, Woody was another level with that, and he really allowed me to coach. Here I was, a young guy sitting behind his bench. He never met me, hired me sight unseen, just on recommendations, and immediately turned me loose and let me make mistakes and let me coach and allowed me to grow. So that was something that really impacted who I am now. And then obviously Eric Spoelstra being the catalyst to this whole thing. You know, he doesn't get enough credit for the coach that he is. Personally, I think he's one of the best in the league, and maybe I'm a little biased, but a lot of people say, you know, coaching the Big Three team should have been easy. Anybody could coach that team, and I say BS. That was one of the hardest teams we ever had to coach, to get those guys to share the ball, to get them to sacrifice for the greater good. You know, those things were difficult, to get them to defend with incredible effort and not rely on four other guys to protect them, but everybody had to do it. He really set those guys, set a high standard for those guys and held them accountable to that and really pushed them to that. And I just learned a lot underneath him. Obviously, he's my friend, but, man, I'm just telling you, he is an incredible coach. He's always open-minded. He always has a growth mindset about things. He's always making himself uncomfortable. I obviously made him very uncomfortable a lot as an assistant. He always
you would challenge him.
I always challenged him, and he wanted that. He wanted that from me, and it really allowed me to go to another level. You know, he basically, you know, I was an extension of him on the court. It would be days where he wouldn't say nothing for 15 minutes in practice, but I'm doing all of the coaching. So he was, without telling me, he was already preparing me for this. And then, I try not to miss a day where I didn't speak to Coach Riley. I spent, whether it was 10 minutes, whether it was 30 minutes, I tried to talk to him every single day. And very few of the conversations were X's and O's. He'd show me some plays we should look at or ways to post a guy or here and there, but it was always cultural. It was always about, building something bigger, and not just showing up and coaching, but building something bigger, making them better men. That's what he was about, and you can see it because who comes back to work for him, but other than guys that play for him,
right.
And it's because they love him and they'll run through a wall for him. And so, going through all of that in my career, over the last 18 years or so, I really felt like I was prepared for this. They really molded me and allowed me to make certain mistakes. And by any means, I'm not saying I've arrived at all. I'm going to make some mistakes here in my first year here. And, the key is can I limit those and can I learn from them quickly? But I do feel like all of those guys had a say-so in me being ready for this. And a lot of the assistants I worked with, Bob Bender and Keith Smart, both I worked underneath those guys for different teams, and here they are with me now as assistant coaches. Both of them were mentors to me. Larry Drew, Jim Boylan, Ron Rothstein was instrumental in me becoming the coach that I am. I mean, you're talking about a guy, a master of defense, a master of understanding the season and when to push a guy and when to back off. These guys all had say-so in me being ready for this, and I credit them and I thank them for it.
Well, we're in the third day of training camp, and obviously we'll get into some basketball. But one last thing on culture. When you talk to the players, they love the fact that you're so direct, that like you're honest and authentic. It reminds me of when Hubie Brown took over. It reminds me of when Lionel Hollins came in and turned this team into a 50-win team. How important is that? You didn't play in the NBA. But you know basketball at a high level, but the idea that you have to be authentic. Yes. How would you describe how important that is?
It's critical. I mean, you got to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. My job is not just to show up for the game and start coaching, but my job is to be honest with these guys on where they stand and what they need to improve on. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not necessarily easy to say, and maybe you don't want to deal with the reaction from a player. But at the end of the day, they got to respect the fact that you're being honest with them. And they may not always agree with you, so it doesn't seem like truth at first. But I'm never going to tell them something that I don't have evidence of. Right. That's something I harp on my assistant coaches. Don't bring me suggestions unless you got some evidence, because that's what I grew up in. I couldn't go to Eric Musselman or Woody or especially Spo without data. Without having a body of work that says, hey, we need to work on this. We need to fix this. And so if I go to a player to fix something, you better believe it's something that I'm seeing consistently. And guys really want to hear the truth. They want to know where they stand. And if they're not playing for some reason, they want to know why. And so I'm always going to explain the why. I'm never going to be above the why, because if I was a player, I would want to know that too. This is your career. This is your livelihood. Your family is being fed off of your productivity, basically. And so I really just try to tell the truth, but I'm not trying to break them, but I always will also explain why. And I think they respect that.
Let's get to the training camp. Chris Wallace, the Grizzlies general manager, made it a point on media day to say, like, we have a nice dynamic with the roster. You got a bunch of guys who have had years of experience in the league. There's probably not much of a middle, because you got a bunch of young guys who've 3 years or less.
Right.
And so, like, for you, like how are you going to strike that balance in terms of player development and just winning basketball games?
Well, again, these guys coming back early really helped that. Mm-hmm. These young guys were here all summer. So they really got an education over the course of the summer from myself or from the coaching staff and really getting a lot of drill work in, a lot of shots, understanding the culture. They were ahead of the veterans, because it started. That's why I wanted to coach summer league, so I can just start instilling culture into these guys right away. And the fact that Jermichael, he plays summer league, so he got a taste of it right out the gate. And a lot of these guys are ahead of schedule from that standpoint. And I don't have to rely on that many young guys from that standpoint. We got a very good veteran core of 9 or 10 guys that have they don't get sick at sea. They've been through this before, and but I got a feeling 1 or 2 of these young guys can really make some strides to crack the lineup, and I'm leaving it wide open for them to do that.
Talked to you recently about James Ennis, and I know you got Troy Daniels, but if you were to put your finger on one guy who you really needed to be an X factor, who would that be?
It'd be James Ennis.
Okay.
Because his size. Again, to beat these teams that are already ahead of us from that standpoint, we got to have multiple guys that are versatile. And James brings incredible versatility with his shooting, his ability to put it on the floor. He's a great cutter and offensive rebounder, and then defensively, he can guard multiple positions. And so James really he's prepared for this. He really had an awesome summer. Like I said, the day he signed with us, he said, "Coach, don't worry about it. I'll see you in Memphis when you get there because I'm going tomorrow." And he's been there ever since, and he's prepared himself to be an X factor for us, and he knows what I expect. We've obviously had a long-standing relationship already. I've watched him go through a lot of things personally and been there for him from that standpoint, and so our relationship is really strong, and I got a feeling that James doesn't want to let me down. I really feel that.
Backup point guard. Is there a level of concern there, or when you think of Andrew Harrison and Wade Baldwin, like where's the bar?
High. The bar is high. I think Wade thinks I'm a lunatic because I stopped practice more for him than anybody else. But like I told him, I said, don't take it personal. I'm preparing you for something bigger. You want to just be an NBA player, you're probably on the wrong team. But if you want to be a champion, I'm preparing you for that. And so, I'm rolling the ball out, and whoever the cream rises to the top. I'm letting those guys battle it out, and they'll push each other and make each other better. And whichever guy comes out on top, that's who I go with.
A lot of guys have said you've emphasized defense early in this training camp. Pick and roll defense last year was a problem for the Grizzlies. I don't know how much you've watched that, and can you just can you just tell me like how you plan maybe to improve that?
I'm just gonna drill it, man. It's only one. It's only one way to do it, man. You can't talk about it. You got to work at it. And so we spent a lot of time on that. The last few days, a lot today, because who we're going against. I mean, these guards are unbelievable, man. So many good pick and roll players in this league now that there's only one way to do it. You got to work at it, and it's got to be systematic. And then there has to be guys that transcend the defense, where it breaks down and they can save a possession, save a play. And I'm harping on that too. I told him, I said, I can't coach every single thing. So sometimes your wingspan or your athleticism or your speed has to make up for a breakdown in our defense. But we're really drilling the hell out of it ad nauseum, and hopefully it's going to sink in, and we'll have a great defensive identity.
I know it's been a whirlwind summer for you. What's been more difficult, being a first-time head coach or being a project manager at your house doing renovations?
No doubt the project manager, man, because I've had it going in two places. Obviously the word has been out about all of the changes I've made here.
Right.
And, I think some of the people here think I'm a little nutty because I'm harping on every detail. If it's not done right, if the color isn't right, if the wording isn't right, do it again. Everybody's gonna be held to the same standard, whether it's the guy painting the hallway or putting up a picture, or if it's my players on the court. We're all gonna be held to that standard. And so, I was doing that, rebuilding this place, and then every time I leave and pull up to my house, I'd have to take a couple of deep breaths because my house has been a disaster, and my poor wife has been there basically being she's a site foreman right now, and And I just, I've tried to relieve some of that duty off of her because she's taking care of our 3 dogs, which I'm happy you adopted a dog. That's awesome. Go out and adopt dogs, people.
I did.
And so that's probably been very tough, living in construction and still trying to do the job. That's been tough. But, we knew we were already mentally prepared for all of it. The change is never easy, but it's been so exciting for me. I haven't had time to bitch and moan.
Yeah. Well, one last thing, Coach. You're going to have the open practice, the public practice on Saturday. Yeah. And I know it's just not a public practice for you. Like there's a meaning behind it, if you will, explain. This game is really not for the game. When I first told our marketing people that I wanted to do the game, they were all excited because they were thinking, oh, we're going to play a game early and be able to do this and that. And, I said, no. I said, this game is about charity. This game is about us getting involved. This game is about being a solution to some of the stuff that's going on. I'm tired of talking and just talking. The symposiums are great, don't get me wrong. The thing I did at the Civil Rights Museum was an incredible honor, and I'd do it 100 times again. But at the same time, when I say Memphis, we got to get our hands dirty, I got to lead by example. And so I wanted this game to be the kickoff to something great. And, with everything that's going on between the police and the community, we got together with Memphis PD because they want to make change as well. And Director Rollins, who's been incredible. He's been so welcoming. He's already like a brother to me. I mean, guy didn't shake my hand the first time he met me. He hugged me, and that was just so awesome. Yeah. And we're going to kick off a Memphis Police Department mentorship program where we raise money, and our foundation gives money to pay these officers in off-duty hours to go to community service centers in the neighborhood and start getting hands-on with these kids and building relationships with these kids and giving them some guidance and mentorship so that it's not just the guy on the street corner selling dope that they look up to. It's not a guy who shot someone and that's going to prison that they look up to. These are guys upstanding citizens in their community that are giving back to them. And so it's not just, like I said before, it's not just going to be the officers. I'm going to have myself, my coaching staff, the players. I'm going to be hitting on the front office guys. All of us need to go to these places and start spending time with these kids and showing them there are other options out there. And so I wanted to be solution-based with everything, with all the people that talk and doing interviews and all of this stuff is great, but are we doing something to impact? And so right out the gate, I wanted, which Memphis is always out in front when it comes to community stuff, I wanted to keep that going and be right out in front and create something that has real lasting change. Well, Coach Fizz, I really appreciate you joining us. And since we're in this tight room, and I know you would win the fight, that's Fizz with 2 Z's.
Absolutely. Come on, man. We got to get the commercial appeal on board. Griz and Fizz with 2 Z's, man. That's what it's about. And people, please, if you're listening to this, please come out on Saturday. It's free. If you show up, you get a voucher for another free preseason game. And for every person that shows up, our foundation will donate money in honor of you to this project. And so we're putting our money where our mouth is, and the only thing that helps it is people showing up. The more people show up, the more money we have to put into the program. So come on, Memphis, get out there and let's make some real change.
All right. Well, we'll be back at you with another Grizzlies podcast soon.
Like the Commercial Appeal on Facebook and follow on Twitter at Memphis News. This is the Commercial Appeal.